morning, everyone. Woo, we're in San Francisco. All right, I know we're having awesome conversations out there, but I need you to kind of come down, chew on some breakfast, drink your coffee. Awesome, so here we are, 2017. We made it through another half of a year, through another administration changeover, and we're still alive, so woohoo! So welcome everybody to the 2017 Public Art Preconference. I'm glad we're all here. We have a record number of attendees this year. We have over 300 of you. And you're all in this room together, so you're going to make some new friends. Yeah, so thank you. I'm going to get my presentation up here. So give me 1 second. All right, so we are going to be talking about the next day and a half, expanding the ecosystem in public art. And I feel really short, so we're going to stand over here for a second. All right. We've been noticing over the past few years that things have been changing in the public art system. We've noticed this for the past trend of at least the past 15, 20 years. So we're going to focus this next day and a half on sort of focusing on what that means to expand, to think sort of bigger. How are we partnering with different folks, and who are we really engaging with as we do our work? But before we get started, I'm actually going to do a few housekeeping tips. One, if you have any questions about tours, there is a table right outside that door that will open at 10 o'clock, so after this ends. So any questions, you're going to go that way. Tours are that way. And then I also want to thank, before we get started, Forecast Public Art. They donated again another 250 of their latest issues of the Public Art Review. So free copies will be outside the concurrent sessions when we get over there after this session ends. And there will also be swag you can find from both LA Metro and the Charlotte Arts and Transit agencies. So thank you everyone for bringing all that. So moving forward, just a few more thank yous. We really want to thank the Kenneth Rainin Foundation. They're a local Bay Area foundation who has done a lot these past few years within the public art realm. And they have been a huge contributor to making sure that this all happens. So I just want to thank them. Thank you. Cool, and I also want to thank the Public Art Network Council. If I can get you guys to stand for like 2 seconds so we can acknowledge you. They have been working their tails off for the past 6 months to really make sure that this is going to be one of the best conferences you've had to have attended. So thank them and hug them. And I know Sarah's got and Susan got some great inspirational words coming up for you. So I'll be hearing them from them in a second. And so back to this sort of topic of expanding the ecosystem. Over the past 2 years or so, Americans for the Arts has been doing a few studies out in the field that some of you have been involved with. One has been in 2015, we did something called the Local Arts Agency Census. We reached out to about 4,500 local arts agencies around the country. About 1,000 of you responded, and we've noticed from that study that there's about 512 public art programs around the country that we can attain for, which is amazing because about 10 years ago, there was about 432, so we're growing, which is exciting. And then earlier this year, we reached out to those public art programs, and we did another public art program survey. We're still getting the results in, but I got a few preliminary things I kind of want to share from you that we've sort of been observing as things have been growing. So we've noticed over the past few years, the public art landscape has been changing. As I mentioned, there's been a 15% growth of programs over the past 15 years. We expect another growth of at least 20% in the next 15 years. Specifically, that includes the rural areas, small cities, and mid-sized cities. So as we start to look at who's actually out there trying to make sure that they're doing public art and really wants to be part of this conversation, they're really sort of these smaller areas, and we're noticing there's a huge clump sort of gathering in like the southeast and sort of mid-Atlantic area. It's kind of a really sort of fascinating trend. So hopefully we'll learn more as we finish doing our preliminary studies of our recent survey and get them out to you. Another thing we noticed is that there's a real growth of nonprofits working with public art programs. So we had about 19% of programs in 2001, and there are about 29% of public art programs that are nonprofits now. And we think that has to do with a lot of these sort of rural and small cities. They just have a different way of doing government, and so there's a lot more partnerships that we're seeing. And again, there's also an emergence of more public-private partnerships as well. Buffalo County is doing a really fantastic one with their museums up in New York, and Greensboro, North Carolina, who I'm sure you guys have heard about, maybe, who's done some amazing work with the Public Art Endowment that they're building up in North Carolina. So we're excited about that. And so yeah, so we're seeing the ecosystem expanding. It's not just cities and governments that are doing this work, it's everybody's really started getting onto the bandwagon with this. And we've all been here first, so we know what it's like to help out these folks. And so Americans for the Arts is trying to figure out what it is to respond to this. We know there's a lot going on out there. We know there's a lot of great information that's already been created, a lot of resources, or a lot of tools, and a lot of valuable experience that has already been collected and sort of happened over the past easily 30 to 40 years. And so how we're responding to this is we're launching today a new tool called the Public Art Resource Center. And essentially it's an online portal to access public art resources that are both AFTA and non-AFTA accessible. And so the challenge we ran into and sort of came to that, and then I'll get more into the system itself, is we noticed as there's sort of this growing need of, for information for public art programs, there's need to access the information. We'll be honest, it's a little hard to find some things on the AFTA website. We get it. There are a lot of non-AFTA resources out there that are doing tons of great work as well. We need to know that information needs to be searchable and findable, and that people are looking for best practice. That's a lot of the questions that we get. That's a lot of the questions that we know that you out there who are in the field are getting as well. And people are looking for examples. What are you doing? What's worked? Things like that. And so we really sort of focused on what is the solution to all this, which seems kind of obvious, but this is what we came up with. So how do we make something that's accessible to all, that can consolidate access to resources that currently exist, and organize resources in a way that's also online? So how do we make sure everything's accessible to everyone as much as we can? And so in 2014, the NEA was kind enough to grant us some money to get this program off the ground. And so we're launching it today. And essentially what it is it's an online portal where people come in, and what they do is they first self-identify to who they are, how they want to relate to resources, how they see themselves relating to the public art field. Are they an artist? Are they administrator? Are they this category of field partners like planners, fabricators, educators, those folks that really kind of you are interacting with to help make sure your projects are happening? And community stakeholders, residents, neighborhood associations, political partners, things like that. And so after self-identifying, people look at to see what it is that they want to look for. Are you looking for tools and resources, the how to do something, how to do a project, how to run your program better? Case examples, examples or case studies, like the what is it that you're trying to accomplish? Or services and opportunities. Do you need help finding who you want to work with in order to make your projects happen? And then step 3, you get to pick a topic. We have a whole list of topics as we organize a lot of these resources in order to make sure that you find what you're looking for when you need it. And so what you end up getting is sort of a whole long list, and I'm sorry these screens are so small, of basically all the stuff that we found out there. And it's not just AFTA stuff. There's links here that'll take you out to places like the Public Art Forecast, the Forecast Public Art Toolkit, because we know that's a really big tool. There's links to other important information such as the AIC database and other information that's out there that we know that you need to access. But this is really sort of a landing port for you and to anybody else that you serve can come to and help find things that they need to help educate themselves on public art. So that's for you. And it's a dynamic center. It's not something that I expect to live and just exist and we're done with it. We need your help to grow it. So if you run across resources or information or tools that you use that you think would be really great for other people to know about it, just send them to me. I'll be more than happy to get them up there for you and really kind of make sure that they're out there for folks to use. And check it out, that's the link. If you want to see a demonstration of it, we're doing one tomorrow afternoon at 4:30 in Center Stage, where you guys all get your badges. And I'll show you how it works. So I'm really excited about it. I just want to thank everyone that's helped me put it together. It's been a really sort of fantastic project to move forward with, and I'm continuing to see how it can grow to really support you guys. And stay in the know if you're doing work, and as we as Americans for the Arts do new resources. We have a lot of research papers that we're doing. We're launching a bunch of other tools. Become a member. I know a lot of you are, but if you aren't, please join us. If you are, thank you so much. And we'll keep you posted as things become available through the access to the Public Art listserv, through postings on public art opportunities on the AFTA website, which is going to be a new tool that we're launching in a few weeks, access to online learning opportunities, and you can become a Public Art Network member, who you're going to hear from a few of in a short time. And so yeah, if you have any questions, just let me know. I look forward to talking with all of you. Again, thank you all so much for coming to San Francisco. I'm really excited to meet all of you. We're going to have a fantastic day and a half together. And I'm done with my time. So I'm going to introduce Robert Lynch. He's the CEO and president of Americans for the Arts.
So hello, everybody. I just want to say it's really exciting to be here at the beginning. This is the very first event of the conference for the next 5 days, and so I love that. And it's great to see 300 people, is what you just said, attending the conference, and the fact that out of 1,000 returned responses, 512 public art programs across the country. That's huge. But when I apply inauguration metrics to that, there's 100,000 of you across the country, and I see 10,000 of you right here, so thank you. You know, I love the serendipity of these kinds of gatherings because just before I came up here, I bumped into a guy named Bill Hutchinson who had walked into the wrong room because his 200, or I think it's 250 members of the American Theater Critics Association are also staying here in the hotel. And he wanted to talk about, he knows our work, he knows your work, how can we work together? And so they're all going to become part of our action fund. So thank you for that opportunity right here in 5 minutes. And you know, just as an observation, every part of our arts network today is critically important to us. So for example, theater critics and art critics of all time, of all kinds of art forms, are really important in a time when the validity of things like the Julius Caesar production at the Public Theater are being questioned, and the work of artists all across the country are being looked at through a prism of, you know, propriety or not. We need people helping us come up with the right kinds of arguments and talk and dialogue. So I welcome the theater critics. I want to say thanks for Abel Lopez, the chairman of our board, being here. And also John Hayworth, who's been so wonderfully helpful to the council. Mara Walker is there in the back of the room. Allison Beck is here, my assistant, the staff who are here. And then Patricia, thank you so much for your hard work. I see it every day, and I thank you for what you're doing for this part of Americans for the Arts. So I'm here to say, and Patricia, am I supposed to do the 1 hour version or the 5 minute version? Where are you? 5 minutes? Oh, okay, got it. All right. So what I want to say, first of all, is welcome to San Francisco and the Public Art Network pre-conference. And I had a great meeting yesterday with the Public Art Network Council, a great group of people really putting a lot of time. Could I just ask for a round of applause for them? They're really, thank you. What I want to say just about my introduction, I'm Bob Lynch, you all know that. I am the CEO of Americans for the Arts. I'm also the CEO of the Americans for the Arts Action Fund, separate 501c4 organization, and the CEO of our Action Fund PAC. 3 separate entities that are all weighing in the current situation that we're in for making a case and advocating for the kind of support that is happening at the federal level, but also what happens at the state and local levels, which becomes very important to all of you. You know, I want to thank you, first of all, for your good work. Your good work all across the country. Now, my work involves traveling weekly. And so I collect airports, and I collect train stations, and I collect car rental outlets. And I get to celebrate and see your work probably more than almost anyone else. I celebrate the art and the work that you make possible. This year, for me, Boston, Tampa, Dallas, Houston, Columbus, Los Angeles, San Diego, Reno, Oklahoma City, and smaller places like Marietta, Ohio, and Richmond, Virginia, along with Miami and Salt Lake City and Denver and Omaha. Every one of those places, I enjoyed something that you've done. I saw what you have made more beautiful, or given ideas through your work, or made, in the eyes of a mayor, a community more accessible and interesting for both the people who live there and for visitors. So what I see is you as the joy makers, the thought-provoking turn of a corner producers, the people who animate a place, whether it's a neighborhood or an entire city. And you have been there in all of those kinds of situations, whether it's permanent, long-term, or temporary, all across the country. And I appreciate everything that you do, not just for me, but for all the people that I see interacting with the work. You have an impact. And you have an impact for the public, but also for the partnerships that we are trying to build to advance support for the arts. At the local level, that's the United States Conference of Mayors, who love public art and have a public policy that we got them to adopt, saying that public art is important, or the League of Cities, or the National Association of Counties, or the private sector people like the Council on Foundations and the independent sector, or the state level folks like the National Conference of State Legislators or the lieutenant governors. All of them are important to the arts, but they're particularly important and could be even more important to public art. I've had some really wonderful specific interactions this year, so I'd always love to point out my highlights. One was meeting Jun Kaneko in his studio where the American Craft Council was meeting, and also seeing all of the potential among craft artists across America who could be incorporated and want to be incorporated as public artists and need your help to do that. Chuck Close on our artist committee created one of the great public art pieces in the subway system this year, and many others along the way. So what I see us in as a time right now, and you do this work, where art is dialogue and is creating dialogue, tough dialogue and positive dialogue. So I had a dinner just the night before last in the advocacy work with a congressman and a senator, and there were half a dozen other people there. And they talked about several things that are happening in the new administration, but they focused on the future of support for the National Endowment for the Arts, the National Endowment for the Humanities, the Institute of Museum and Library Services, and they were positive about it. But very interestingly, and they were Republican leaders that we need on Appropriations Committee, but at the same time, several other guests there, they wanted to talk about the Julius Caesar work. They wanted to talk about the Texas-Houston production of the Andre Serrano exhibit that's up right now. And so it's a time for us to understand that that's both a challenge and an opportunity, and you're in the center of it. So I really thank you all for being here. And the last thing I'll say is that just in our office in Washington, D.C., and I invite all of you to come visit sometime, all 10,000 of you sitting out there, we get to look out one window at the White House across McPherson Square at the beautiful public art that was created hundreds of years ago, monuments and design. We get to look out one window and see that. And we get to look the other way when we come out the door at a wonderful Louise Nevelson sculpture, giant Louise Nevelson sculpture, my favorite artist, right on the corner in front of where Walt Whitman lived when he was living in Washington, D.C. It's a wonderful synergy and a wonderful reminder of how long we've been in this work together. Thank you for being here. Have a great conference.
So thank you. So I'm going to introduce our next speaker. It's Susan Pontius. I want you guys to give a big round of applause for her and her team. She's the Director of Public Art for the City of San Francisco. And she has been our host and has done a fantastic job making sure you guys are going to have an amazing dine arounds last night, an amazing reception. And then this afternoon, you're going to have some fantastic tours. So Susan?
Good morning. I am so excited to see all of you here, and I'm sorry, I do have to apologize for the weather. I know I know many of you are looking forward to the fog and cold and wind that San Francisco is known and loved for, and instead we have sun and a heat wave in the 70s with no relief in sight. So, but I hope that doesn't stop you from getting out and enjoying the city I love, and seeing some of the great artwork that we have here. It has really been a privilege to work in a place where art and culture have always been valued and are seen as a solution to many of the problems that every city has, from healthcare to homelessness to transit to sewage treatment. I say that because I see Nori Sato sitting in front of me, who is working on that just now. She's it's all up to Nori. I want to thank my planning committee who helped me so much, Jennifer Easton, formerly of San Jose and now at BART. Jennifer, if you stand up and bow. Shelley Trott from the Rainin Foundation, and of course our own Jill Manton from the Arts Commission and my former boss. And the Arts Commission staff, many of them who are here today and will be leading tours, if everybody from the Arts Commission could just stand up, just because I want people to see who you are. I know you're here. You're required to be here. Okay, I don't want to take up time because we've got a really exciting program. So what's next, Patricia? And now I would like to introduce the president of our council, Sarah Odenkirk, who has kept us on task this past year.
Thank you. It's a real pleasure to be here, and thank you to Susan and her staff and Patricia. And AFTA, we have so much to be grateful for, and it's wonderful. I'll say it even though everyone else has said it too. It's wonderful to see you all here. So one of the things that I hope you all have people gotten the newsletter? Is it out? It's on the tables. Great. So please do pick up a newsletter. This newsletter we started last year as a way to try to communicate with the membership a little bit more, and to encourage you all to know who we are as the council and to get involved with the work that we're doing on the council all year round. So this newsletter, really the thanks goes to Lester Berg for putting the original one together and getting us started on the second one. And to Michael Chavez. Is Michael here? I'm going to embarrass him. Michael, thank you to Michael, but actually not really Michael. It's actually his fiancée, Meredith. At our winter meeting in New Orleans, Michael proposed to Meredith, and I'm sure he promised her adventure and romance and didn't mention anything about the graphic design work she was going to be required to do on our newsletter. So Michael, as many of you may know, is from Denver, and so he, on Monday, is going to begin working on next year's conference. But he's already done us a big favor in planning his wedding and honeymoon around the conference to make sure that Meredith is back in town to do next year's newsletter as well. So thank you, and thank you to Meredith. So actually in the newsletter is some important information. We have some information about the newest council members, Lucas and Julia, who joined us this year and have added tremendous voices to the council. And also a call to all of you. We have 4 positions coming open in the fall, and it would be wonderful if as many of you as possible could throw your hat in the ring. Having a diversity of voices, geographic representation, and as much diversity as we can get on the council is really important to make sure that the conversation remains strong and relevant. So please, council already stood up, so I'm not going to make them stand again, but seek us out and ask any questions you might have about being on the council and what sorts of things we do, and please do get involved. All right, finally, I've been on the council for 6 years and I'm rolling off. It's been an incredible pleasure and honor to be on the council. They've allowed me to be the dictator the last 2 years, which has been a lot of fun, and I'm going to miss that a lot. But I really, the council is a fantastic group of people, so get involved and join us. All right, finally, it is my honor and privilege to introduce John Hayworth. John is the Emeritus Senior Executive Director for the Smithsonian's National Museum of the American Indian and a longtime supporter of both the work at PAN as well as AFTA. John, thank you.
It's been great to serve on the PAN Council, and before I introduce the award, I want to do a shout out to three very special people, certainly to both Sarah and Susan, but also to John Pounds. They're three of our council members who will be rotating off this year. And I just want to say about all of them, to the person, I have learned so much from these three individuals. They are thought-provoking. They care so much about our field. They work so hard. They give their time. They give their brains and talents to all this work for all of us. So I'm just indebted to all three of you for the work that you've done and the service you've given the last several years. So thank you a lot. I think we have a little presentation, or maybe they're doing this already. Oh, they already did it. They're moving too fast. This is high octane group. So let me tell you about the award. Every year, Americans for the Arts presents leadership awards and public leadership in the arts awards to honor those who are committed to building communities through the arts. These awards recognize the achievements of individuals, organizations, or programs committed to enriching their communities through the arts. The Public Art Network Award is given in recognition and honor of innovation and creative contributions and exemplary commitment and leadership in the field of public art. It can be given either to an individual, including an artist, an administrator, a volunteer, a designer, or government official, or an organization, including arts councils, public art programs, or private and public entities. The award is presented by the Americans for the Arts Public Art Council Advisory Council. PAN is designed to provide services to this diverse field of public art and to develop strategies and tools to improve communities through public art. Its key constituencies are public arts professionals, visual artists, design professionals, and communities and organizations planning public art projects and programs. The PAN Council itself is a group of elected leaders who provide guidance and advice to Americans for the Arts on public art programs and services. And before we present the award, I'd like to invite all the staff in the room from For Culture to the stage. Would you join me? You get the mic. Okay, great. Thank you so much. It's so good to see you.
Kelly and Jordan of For Culture.
So as many of you probably know, Kath Bruner is the Director of Public Art at For Culture, the cultural services agency for King County, Washington. Kath has dedicated over 25 years to creating meaningful opportunities for artists to affect public policy, stimulate dialogue, and shape the world we live in. We here, representing the staff of For Culture, have been lucky to sit beside her and learn from her in the trenches. And from this privileged position, it's with great honor that we tell you a few things that we know about Kath Bruner.
Kath has set the bar for fair artist contracts. She has made artist engagement in the earliest stage of project development a norm. Kath stewards design team collaborations that are strong and deep. She has embedded artists in unlikely master planning, unique residency opportunities, and unexpected conference settings.
Kath has pioneered artist rosters as well as public-private partnerships. She has made public art consulting services a significant part of our daily work bringing best practices and more art to more places. Large-scale, multi-year, highly integrated projects are a hallmark of her career. She doesn't shy away from the complex. She heads right into it.
Kath believes in the power of art to create social and political change. She's unafraid. Unafraid to try something new, unafraid to fail and to learn. Unabashedly ambitious and experimental.
Kath is a fierce advocate for artists, for their ideas, their process, and their lasting impacts, in the face of controversy and in the everyday. She models fiscal responsibility and always has a plan, but she is the first to remind us that on time and on budget does not define success of public art.
That's right. Kath is a humble rock star, principled, current, flexible. She dreams big, and she empowers and mentors big thinking and makes available the resources to make dreams real.
And after more than 25 years of setting best practices for the field, you might think she'd be set in her ways. But Kath, more than anyone we know, understands the need to continuously consider relevance, to evaluate and reevaluate the status quo, to challenge and to expand the meaning of the words public art.
Kath, you are a visionary. Bold and wise, you're a quick and strategic thinker. You are our and extended Culture mentor and our guide. You help us to see what's possible for ourselves and for the field. You ask and celebrate questions and new ways of seeing. You're the first to give due credit and recognize what you call crackerjack contributions. For all that you have done, for who you are and what you model, we thank you. And we thank the Public Art Network for giving you this deserved recognition.
So without further ado, Kath Bruner.
I wish I was speaking after the staff. I've got to say, if I have any leadership tips, it's this. Hire those people and get out of their way. Okay. So when I found out I was getting this award, first I was shocked. And then I said, I'd like to read the nomination form. And the best part of that form, in my opinion, was this line. Give Kath Bruner a half an hour and a projector, and she will turn even the most skeptical doubters into art proponents. I'm really proud of that. But today I'm preaching to the choir, so I'm not sure. Is that going to be easier or not? In 1991, Glenn Weiss, who was a brilliant conceptual programmer, hired me to develop Artist-Made Building Parts project. I was really excited to hear Bob Lynch this morning talk about craft artists, because that was fundamentally at the root of some of the ideas we had for that. It was a simple program, an idea to help stimulate creative employment opportunities for artists. But AMBP leveraged millions of dollars for art projects and looked beyond a typical 1% for art model. We were asking, what about the other 99%? AMBP evolved into an online registry that showcased artists working in a variety of ways, parts, sites, and plans. One of the first resources of its kind, the registry supported connections between artists, designers, the public and private development worlds. Its curated profiles and high design style helped inspire confidence, connect audiences with artists, and illustrate the infinite possibilities. The registry project was grounded in our belief, our firm belief, that it's our responsibility to stimulate ways for artists to make a living, to promote their work, and to articulate that public art is not one idea or response. By 2012, volume 6 of the registry featured over 3,000 images and was perused by more than 85,000 visitors. For many artists at the time, the registry was their only website. The registry was a great early education for me. It introduced me to a wide variety of artists, and it required me to understand how they wanted to work. AMBP also made us masters of the budget universe. We can move money freely, and we do it often, between construction and art, a skill that has supported a foundational understanding that it's not about the money, it's about the vision. Many artists had no track record of public works, and they decided that maybe they would never get a chance without some proof of their ability to navigate contracts, clients, new materials, and scale. Inspiring risk-taking is central to great art making, and offering artists the opportunity to come out of the studio and take on their first large-scale public project is an amazing reward for the artist, for the client, and the public. That early audit of our arts community inspired us to scope projects that engage a whole range of arts practitioners in our region, like game designers, comic book artists, environmental activists, custom bike builders, performance artists, and poets. I've spent a big part of my career in transfer stations and wastewater treatment facilities. Nori, I know you're going to do a great job. These are my favorite clients. This is really meaningful work. Artists have the opportunity to seize the public's imagination and create an emotional connection to some of the most pressing resource management issues on the planet. Answering her own question, where does all that garbage go? Carol DePellison and Steve McGeehee captured this evocative image. On Earth Day 2009, we placed that image on 41 billboards in major commuting corridors. In the month-long campaign, over 1 million daily commuters saw a billboard each day. Almost 8 years later, this image is so powerful, it is still used as a central message in the agency's goal of zero waste. Brightwater is a state-of-the-art wastewater treatment system and a remarkable public place. It spanned about half of my tenure in public art management. That's because our partners in wastewater wanted artists to imagine this system before design even started, during the siting analysis. Ellen Solid, Buster Simpson, and Jan Rosenqualt's art master plan served as a roadmap for 12 years, 12 artists, and 17 visionary artworks. The planning process united the entire engineering-driven design team to seamlessly integrate art, architecture, landscape design, and educational programs, and to imagine and deliver a sewage treatment facility that is also a neighborhood amenity, an environmental education resource, and an extraordinary ecological restoration. The public art reveals the hidden processes, the scientific innovations, and the environmental benefits of this system. Caring is about connecting, and that is what the art promotes. It invites discovery, it creates memories, it incites understanding. Our partnerships with artists can build deep community connections and stimulate actions that help individuals reimagine their place within a larger social and ecological network. Brightwater does not just treat wastewater. It's a place to gather and to learn and to even get married. This artwork in the Environmental Education Center speaks to the microbial processes, scientific exploration, and our role in the life cycle of water. Just as an aside, in our public art collection, we have 2 sewage treatment plants that host weddings. I believe the art features prominently in that marketing plan. It's hard to tell the story of a 14-mile, 2-county system with a relationship to the entire life cycle of water and our delicate relationship to its preservation. An interactive 7-screen audio and video installation by Jim Blashfield takes transfixed viewers on a journey through watery worlds. Performing only in the rain by harnessing roof water runoff, offering an elaborate squirt and drip and channeling the water to the landscape below, 2 remarkable sculptures flank the center's entry. The art appears when the project opens, but we have a front row seat to the extraordinary commitment and genius that can turn standard stainless steel plumbing fittings into contemporary sculpture, carefully and obsessively, in a good way, engineered to perform in a 100-year rain event. The Art in the Plant Zone celebrates transformation of wastewater as it travels through the process of purification. It marks the passage of cleansed and untreated water. It employs the system's hydraulic engineering, and it helps to contextualize the massive volumes that pass through the system every day. The artwork actually blesses the three elements that leave the plant: air, biosolids, and water, placing a new understanding on the idea of purification and the profound work of the water utility. The artwork questions the power politics of water and our consumer mindset towards unlimited resources. It offers tools for visualization and asks the viewer to place themselves as individuals within this vast system. There are over 40 acres of usable public open space at Brightwater. The artworks offer a way of continually attracting visitors to the place, which again helps connect contemporary urban and rural audiences to a greater understanding of the resources they consume. And to understand the ongoing interaction between the natural systems and human intervention and development that have coexisted for centuries. When our ordinance expanded in 1997, our partners in King County Roads were skeptical about working with artists. Over my dead body was the exact response. The first design team bridge opened in 2000, and by 2005, Cliff Garton was placed in the lead for the design of the York Bridge in Redmond. By 2009, Leo Burke was embedded in the bridge unit to create a design manual. The division director told me, "I knew we'd get great bridges. What I didn't know was the effect on morale. My people are charged up. My people can hardly wait to come to work." Although artists are engaged in designing new infrastructure, sometimes the brutal infrastructure of the 60s demands transformation to address neighborhood concerns, or in this case, a phone call from the county council member. Maybe we have all had cause to send in the art ambulance, but I am still amazed when the patient is actually resuscitated. We've had the privilege of working in partnership with one of the most respected Level 1 trauma centers in the world. The art integrated throughout the entire campus reflects diversity of the patient population. It reduces the emotional and technological stress on patients, staff, and their families, and conveys dignity and worth to all who enter. Our partners in PARCs manage 200 miles of regional trails. Is there a better way to engage the public in understanding that resource than by walking it as an artwork? The long walk was 4 days, 50 miles, and a 3-year adventure through cities, suburbs, farmlands, and forests of King County. This artistic occupation of public space connected citizen trail users and trailside communities through creative engagement. It pushed the boundaries of our clients' assumption about what art can be or do, and it tested the limits of our own capacity for management. And it forever changed our direction and confidence in exploring a new path. Creative justice is proving that there is an alternative to youth incarceration. The success of this program is a direct result of the quality of teaching artists committed to building trust and a curriculum framework to amplify youth voices and address the root causes of incarceration. It's also a direct result of visionary leadership. Some in this room today, and I really want to give a shout out to Jordan and to Diana, who are here. Arts and equity advocates that have the courage and conviction to confront systemic oppression and design the creative platform to acknowledge it, understand it, and end it. Poetry on Buses also celebrates local voices, youth, adult, amateur, and professional. Our most populous and popular program has been rebooted by Tamar to bring communities throughout King County together around issues of shared experience and universal connections. The 2014-2015 campaign was Writing Home, and the 2016-17 campaign, Your Body of Water. Building coalitions of partners strengthens the work and it expands the reach and possibilities. We're really fortunate to work within a region that supports an ambitious coalition of arts agencies, and our partners at Sound Transit, START, and the Office of Arts and Culture in Seattle have really been extraordinary in working with us on this program and other programs in our area. And so right now our entire transportation network is a rolling poetry anthology. that explores the universal connection to water and to each other that we share. Our consulting practice grew out of a restless entrepreneurial spirit and the necessity to keep a first-rate staff despite budget downturns. But it's grown into a rewarding opportunity to work in different contexts and to use our skills to facilitate the best possible outcome for the client and for the artist. And that's ultimately the best outcome for the public. Oops, sorry. I'm a Mac user, not a PC user. Within the context of the Museum of History and Industry, John Grotti's Wawona, which was created entirely from wood salvaged from the historic ship, becomes both artifact and contemporary artwork. More experienced programs have used our services to tackle large-scale expansions and complex construction and to build internal systems for greater buy-in from leadership and external messaging and strategies for greater buy-in from the public. Consulting brings us to small cities and neighborhoods with a sincere desire to make a better place. And in some cases, like Aberdeen, Washington, to ameliorate the devastating psychological impacts of economic distress, job loss, and uncertainty about the future. We bring an understanding of how artists can rise to these kinds of opportunities. And I'll point out that the affirmation of these efforts through the Public Art Network's year-end review acknowledgement means everything. We have done more city halls than probably any other agency. This is the place where a city or town expresses its highest aspirations and identity. And these projects also occur under the very watchful eye of elected officials and department heads. And it's unthinkable to build these gathering places in our region without the meaningful presence of public art. The abundant resources of the Pacific Northwest include a cadre of dedicated artists and outstanding fabricators crazy enough to realize their ambitious vision. I am reminded every day that our work is only as good as the caliber of artists that choose to work with us. We take tremendous pride in maintaining an agency culture that's supported and a supportive platform so artists can reach high and try something for the first time. Like Sheila Klein, who traveled to Belgium to convince Bechtel Industries to make stainless steel yarn from the same material they used to make bulletproof vests, and then to assemble a team of knitters, weavers, and textile artists from rural Skagit County to weave tapestries on an architectural scale. Or Christian Muller, seeing the extraordinary possibility in a security fence and the chance to work out his idea for large pixelated images using only plastic dots and chain link. Advocating for artists is not mutually exclusive to providing value to the public. Artists are the essential ingredient in this practice, and getting the best value for the public demands that arts agencies become better advocates for artists' ideas and that we develop better programming platforms that support artists' initiatives. The work that I'm showing today depends on the extraordinary team at 4Culture. You heard from them, so you know how great they are. Our current staff and those that came before. We are an orchestrated, highly adaptable, and efficient team. Teamwork supports our convictions, it hones our skills, and it provides refuge and encouragement when we fail. We take strength from each other, and we know we can't be afraid to stimulate debate and dialogue and to take risks. We do not fly under any radar. We know that it is vital that we are exceptionally proficient in the language of advocacy. Jerry Allen coordinated the Earthworks' Land Reclamation Symposium and the resulting Robert Morris Earthwork in 1979. That was the same year I began my arts administration career. And I think about that almost every day. And it challenges me to be bold and to build on the strong foundation that he and others have built, and to never doubt that risk pays off in remarkable long-term legacy. The ecosystem of public art will only be limited by the imagination of artists and the ability of administrators like us to get the work done. And project by project, it's an accretion over time, and it is changing the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Kath. And thank you for everything you've done for the field. We really appreciate it. So as we move into our next section of this session, there's some things we try to do every year that try to be a little bit new, try to really kind of reflect on how it is that we as a field are looking at ourselves, moving forward. What are the changes that are happening? Not only the changes that we've talked about a little bit in the beginning from over the past 10, 15 years, but moving forward in the next 5, 10, 15 years, a lot's going to be happening in this field. We know from just changes in the politics and the way our landscape of the communities around us are changing, as well as how we do our work in our field as well. And so as part of that, we are looking at something called the New Voices program for this particular pre-conference. It is to hopefully provide some insight into the field practitioners on current public art practices and how the next generation of artists and administrators may interpret the impact of these practices. Just as we do calls for artists, we did this as sort of a call for asking what people that are coming up through this field are looking at as they look to carry on your legacy as you move forward, and we all move forward into the future of public art. And so we asked an administrator and artist to come to here and do a bit of a presentation, talk a little bit about themselves, and then hear what questions they have. What questions do they want to hear from you guys to help answer? What questions are they facing as they walk into their future? And what is it that we can do as together to move forward? I know I've already learned from them as well, so I'm hoping you will as too. The artist, Dana Bishop, who will be talking, already pointed out to me, which I think is very powerful, as we talked about sort of our tribe of public art administrators, that I as a white person probably should not be using that word. So then how are we sort of looking at that and looking at the way we're talking to ensure that we're being inclusive to everyone as we move forward? How are we learning in order to embrace everybody in our communities and within our field? So without further ado, I'm going to invite Dana Bishop up. She is part of Transformism, a 10-year-old collaborative. Thank you, Renee. A 10-year-old collaborative project in the neighborhood just outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Transformism.
Thank you. Has an embedded partnership with the Braddock Carnegie Library. Their work is informed by a broad public of library users. It utilizes the space for expression, encounter, investigation, and resource exchange that the library provides. And Dana will give you much more information on herself, and we're looking forward to hearing from her. So thank you.
Thank you so much. That was, I feel like a really generous welcome and honest welcome, and I think that it's the exchanges that we have together that build upon our learning and growing. And I think the fact that we are willing to ask questions and start with questions is really powerful. And so I think about, we employ questions and questioning every day in our art practice. And it's a way to recognize who we are, what our bodies, what our presence in our neighborhood signifies. What violences do we occur by just being who we are? Who trusts us? Who doesn't trust us? What conversations can we have? How can we begin conversations from a place of difference and have honest conversations? I'm not going to talk that much about my practice. I'm talking about that a little later at like 10:30. But I did want to talk about the practice of asking questions. And so I see questions as a place for framing, for inquiry and propositions. I think of them as mantras, a way to set intention and also be honest about our impact. So this morning I offer them to you as a morning warm-up to the conversations ahead. And I'm very honored to be among all of you that are doing a really incredible work on legislative levels, advocacy, artists, organizations, municipal and federal levels. So thank you for having me, and thank you for going on this short journey with me of questioning. I arrive here this morning as a member of your public. Right now, at this public art pre-conference, we are each other's public. and we are each connected to many other publics. Public's art. When I say it out loud, it can sound like two things. The public is in possession of the art, or it is the plural, many publics' art. I like this. I like what both of these things suggest. I'm an artist, administrator, neighbor, facilitator, organizer, and a collaborator. I've been collaborating with my current collaboration for 15 years. That's ever expansive. What if we practice identifying multiplicity within public? What if we never assume that public is just one? Where do you locate yourself in public art? What does your public look like? Do I look like your public? Do you look like your public? What if we were explicit in naming our publics? What if instead of accessibility, we work towards accessibilities? What if instead of accessibilities, we work towards engageabilities? When we say diversity, what if we included the subject, diverse to what, diverse to whom? How does public art change when we begin with the understanding that art and culture exists in every place already? I borrow from Tom Finkelpearl and Paul Ramirez-Jonas their practice of naming other public institutions. Public health care, public assistance, public housing, public bathrooms, public defenders, public transportation, public schools, public parks, public libraries. Which ones on this list are we afraid of? Which ones do we lift up? How do you imagine each public? When we get mobilized by the fact that public art is under attack, how can we share that mobilization in recognizing our connectedness to all that is public, that is under attack? The stigmatization, the fear, and the disdain that is maintained in dominant discourse in the USA by systemic political and cultural white supremacy, homophobia, and capitalism attached to most things public teach me something. That to work, live, celebrate, and create in the field of public is where social and economic justices can be fought for. How can public art be unapologetic in its publicness? How can public art be love and justice? We have to recognize that there cannot be relationships unless there is commitment, unless there is loyalty, unless there is love, patience, persistence. Never forget that justice is what love looks like in public. Cornel West and Martin Luther King. How can public art resist its own tendencies to be privatized? What would happen to our conversations today if the racial equity pre-conference plopped down inside of our conference? And what would happen vice versa? So I have two quick, how am I doing on time? Okay, two quick stories to share. One is recently, about 9 years ago, we did a public art project in our neighborhood, and it was a way for us to get to know our new neighborhood, our neighbors, and collaborate with institutions on every level. We did an incredible piece with Leon Reed on a walking bridge in order to call attention to the fact that it was a walking bridge and used every day. And on it, it was a stainless steel tree, and underneath it, it said, "We will grow together." And last year, I saw a great blog post on our kind of Pittsburgh-based newsletter called Next Pittsburgh. It's really excellent. And it had a picture of this art piece. And underneath it, it said, "Economic development comes to Braddock." And it was an article about multiple businesses that were getting started by predominantly white people who have access to resources from outside of the neighborhood. This stung. It was painful. It was hard to acknowledge how this artwork was being seen and being utilized 9 years later. I don't think it's a surprise, and it's not something that we can avoid or step away from. We must recognize our impact and be responsible to it. I recently asked at a advocacy panel conversation hosted by Greater Pittsburgh Arts Council, what do we do as artists when we recognize that our artwork is being utilized as a tool for economic development? And one person, Majestic Lane, said to me, who works for the city of Pittsburgh, he said, we already know that. What are you going to do? So I think that's where we are. And so I say now, how do we interrogate what we mean by economic development? And how do we sit with that? And then I would say lastly, I choose a public art practice because I'm interested in what our connection is, what our differences are, and how can we be responsible to each other. I forgot that slide, but.
Thank you, Dana. I forgot my paper. Oh. So we have our next presenter coming up. This is Chris Appleton. He's a native of Atlanta, Georgia, and he's a co-founder and executive director of Wonder Root, an Atlanta-based organization founded in 2004, working at the intersection of arts and social justice. At Wonder Root, Chris leads the organization's strategic development, major partnerships, and supports its talented and passionate staff. He is also part of the Emerging Leaders Council for Americans for the Arts. So take it away, Chris.
Thank you. Thank you all so much for having me here. It is a pleasure. Wonder Root, I want to talk a little bit about Wonder Root as an organization, the work that two friends and I started a little over a decade ago, and then zero in on a project we've been working on with actually several partners in the room, public art project we've been working on the last couple of years, sort of the intersection of art, transit, and transit-oriented development. Wonder Root is an arts organization that works to improve the social and cultural landscape of Atlanta through creative initiatives and community partnerships. We run an arts center for the last decade, and our work really falls into two different buckets. We support artists to have working professional careers in Atlanta, and we partner with civic organizations and help them develop arts and culture solutions to pressing social issues in the Atlanta region. So that makes, I love seeing the list of publics earlier. That means we work with the criminal justice system and the public school system and the public transit system, and every once in a while an economic development agency. This project en route, which began as a creative placemaking initiative aiming to create public artworks exploring issues of access, mobility, and public transportation. It began when MARTA, Atlanta's transit system, came to us and said, we are going to redevelop land in partnership with private developers surrounding several of our transit stations, transit-oriented development. We're not very great at community engagement. We're not great at getting feedback from residents and stakeholders at these varied, in these varied communities. We need help doing that, and we'd like to take an arts and culture approach. And so we helped them to design and really implement this project over the last couple of years. And partners in the room include City of Atlanta, certainly MARTA, and Fulton County. Questions that we are asking ourselves now that this project is coming to its conclusion, and that I think are important for the field, are what are creative approaches to including community stakeholders, and we mean community stakeholders in the big sense, from institutional stakeholders to neighborhood residents and workers. How do we include these people in the process of visioning for and creating these artworks? One approach that we took was the lead artist on this project, Fahamu Peku, decided that he wanted the subject of one of the murals that he created through the project to be residents in the neighborhood. And so he did a community photo shoot. We had over 60 residents come out and participate in this photo shoot. And then residents determined who would be the subject of the image. I'm going to skip to page. So we also recognize that it's important to embrace diverse perspectives when working in the field. And so this half-mile radius, thinking about, who gets a vote, who gets to participate, who weighs in. The neighborhood is at the MARTA station that we've been working in is the King Memorial MARTA station, which it's at the intersection of Martin Luther King Memorial Drive, historic neighborhood, just a short walk to the birthplace of Dr. King, Dr. King's National Monument. And so while young people in the neighborhood and some of the current residents of the neighborhood felt like that the community was about cultivating a young generation so that they can take flight and soar. Kids should walk by the station and see images that make them believe that they can fly. That's what residents wanted to see out of the public artworks. And so this was an early draft of the mural, reflecting that sentiment. But when we went to the NPU, the Neighborhood Planning Unit, the Urban Design Commission, started talking with institutional stakeholders, they really felt like the mural and the public artwork should reflect Dr. King's legacy. Young people in the neighborhood didn't necessarily think that there should be an explicit reference to Dr. King, that it was important to call out a new generation of civil rights leaders. And so the compromise was this, was a direct textual reference to Dr. King. An individual has not started living until he can rise above the narrow confines of his individualistic concerns to the broader concerns of all humanity. And this is how we executed and brought those voices together. This being the final image. One last question that I think that we should ask, and certainly I think this was asked before me, is how we resist and mitigate the co-option of creative placemaking in public art. And I think that the short answer is starting with following the artist's lead. I think that I, as an administrator, can always do more. We as administrators can always do more to listen to our artists. I recall maybe a year and a half ago, some of you may have participated. Chairman Chu was on a tour across the country holding conversations in preparation for the launch of the Creativity Connects initiative. And one of the questions that was asked that in a kind of small group conversation in Atlanta was, is this trend of arts and cross-sector work new? What is the reason for this new trend? And the sole artist in the room raised his hand and he said, we've been doing this for centuries. You administrators have just now caught on. And I think that that's important for us to all remember, that we ought to trust our practitioners. We ought to trust our artists. One other question that didn't make it into my presentation, but I was reading this morning, a friend shared with me, and he said that we need to think more about the tension between importance and urgency. And I think that's very true in a public art practice. Maybe that's why we don't meet all the deadlines all the time. What is important is not always urgent, and what is urgent is not always important. So thank you all so much.
So thank you, Chris. So that was the call. That was the questions. That is the thoughts. That is what we're going to be asking Chris and Dana to kind of carry with them, and hopefully you guys as well as you go through this next day and a half. And the response is going to be ending, is going to help us end and close out this pre-conference tomorrow, so I look forward to hearing and seeing what they're observing throughout the next day and a half. So we are done here. So the next sessions are really super simple to get to. You just go out the door that way, and you just go around to your right, and you're going to see the Golden Gate area, and that's where your next sessions are. So out around. Thank you, everyone.